Seriously? You call that a lift? The trainer sneered, his laughter bouncing off the walls, sharp and relentless. The gym fell into an uneasy hush, all eyes snapping toward her. Every head turned, and yet not one person dared speak. "I've seen toddlers with better form than you," he barked again, dragging his words out like daggers. She gritted her teeth, letting the insult settle like ice in her chest, her fingers flexing around the barbell. He circled her with predatory delight, exaggerating her posture, twisting her efforts into something laughable. "Oh, look at that! She's trying so hard! Too cute, right?" More laughter erupted from a few in the crowd, a ripple of amusement that made her stomach twist. Her mind raced, calculating, weighing, planning. She could feel the weight of every mocking glance, every smirk. Yet beneath the surface, a fire simmered, unseen, unbroken. "You think you can just waltz in here and act like you belong?" the trainer shouted, now pacing aggressively, spotlighting her like a specimen. The words were venomous, yet they fueled a quiet strength inside her. She didn't respond immediately. The silence stretched, thick and deliberate. Even as his laughter tried to drown her resolve, a subtle shift began, a heartbeat of control slowly settling into her bones. The audience may have noticed his power, but she was quietly claiming her own. The tension was suffocating, but she would not be broken, not here, not now. Eyes darted, whispers slipped between lips, and phones quietly emerged. Some members filmed, some scrolled past, indifferent, yet every glance captured a fleeting acknowledgement of what was happening. Silence had become a participant, and complicity clung to the walls like a shadow. Her gaze swept the room, noting who faltered and who leaned in, every reaction a reflection of society's quiet tolerance for cruelty. The murmurs, soft but pointed, whispered, "She's not supposed to be here." Each syllable stung, but the weight only steeled her determination. Even as the gym's energy shifted, no one confronted the trainer. Some avoided eye contact, some smirked nervously, and a few recorded the moment, preserving the injustice for all to see. Yet, in that quiet observation, she began to understand the subtle currents of influence and power. Their eyes, their silence, their judgment, it all fueled her awareness. "Honestly, I've never seen someone struggle this much just to lift a dumbbell," he snapped, his voice rising, echoing off every wall like a hammer striking steel. The words weren't just insults. They were judgments carved into her presence, pressing down like invisible chains. The murmurs from the crowd grew louder, a mixture of nervous laughter, hidden sympathy, and awkward glances. Each comment from the trainer landed as if aimed to diminish her existence, to assert dominance, and to reinforce a hierarchy that had no place in her reality. Yet she remained poised, letting the verbal barrage roll over her without breaking. Inside, every humiliation was catalogued, transformed, into resolve, a mental ledger of strength accumulating silently. His voice, dripping with scorn, became a metronome to her focus. Every sneer, every laugh, a reminder of the barriers she had already overcome. "You're lucky that's the last rep," he sneered, dismissing her effort. But she felt her power, simmering beneath the surface. The audience's attention, the camera phones, the stifled laughter, they were all pieces of a puzzle she was beginning to assemble, readying herself for the inevitable shift in momentum. Her eyes narrowed slightly, a spark igniting that no voice could quench. The tension thickened, and the silence she carried became heavier than any word. Every sneer, every mocking gesture from the trainer only made her stillness more formidable, her calmness more threatening. Some in the crowd shifted uncomfortably, sensing the subtle energy radiating from her. This wasn't just a moment of resistance. It was a quiet declaration of power, a refusal to allow humiliation to define her. Her jaw set, lips pressed into a line of unyielding resolve. The trainer gestured again, loud and brazen, expecting, compliance, expecting panic. But all he received was stillness. Her internal fury danced just below the surface, a storm coiled tightly within. Each inhalation, each heartbeat, was a drum of calculated patience. In the room, cameras focused. Whispers rose, yet her presence dominated every frame. She was both seen and unseen, mocked and undeniable. The eyes on her weren't just watching, they were documenting the silent strength of someone who refused to be erased. The air vibrated with anticipation, the audience holding their collective breath, knowing the tide was about to turn. Finally, her voice cut through the tension, soft but unmistakable. "You'll regret underestimating me," she said, each word deliberate, echoing like a warning in the quiet chaos. The trainer froze, the smirk faltering for a brief instant, and the audience shifted, leaning in instinctively. It wasn't an angry outburst. It was a promise. Calm, measured, and coldly precise, her words carried weight far heavier than any insult he had hurled. The gym seemed to hold its breath, the energy pivoting subtly, yet undeniably. She let the phrase linger, letting them dwell on its implication. The silence that followed amplified her presence, making the trainer's previous mockery seem small, fragile, and utterly impotent. The atmosphere thickened with a mix of awe, curiosity, and tension, the invisible scales of power subtly tipping. Every bystander now felt it. This wasn't the moment of humiliation anymore. It was the threshold of reckoning. Her restraint, her control, and her quiet declaration were signals of the power she had held all along. And though the trainer tried to recover, the first tremor of doubt had already taken root. The tension remained palpable, unresolved, drawing the audience deeper as the story poised itself for the inevitable confrontation yet to come. "Just a regular visitor," Serena muttered under her breath, tugging the brim of her baseball cap lower over her eyes. The gym doors swung open and she stepped inside, determined to disappear into the crowd. Hooded sweatshirt, plain leggings, worn sneakers, every piece carefully chosen to mask the athlete behind the disguise. A few members glanced her way, nodding casually, and she let herself melt into the rhythm of ordinary routines. No cameras, no autograph seekers, no admiration, just the quiet hum of a space she'd navigated countless times as a recognized competitor. Today, however, she was invisible by choice, testing the fragile boundaries between privilege and perception. Her heartbeat thrummed with anticipation. Would she be welcomed or scrutinized? Even the smallest interaction could reveal the subtle bias that often goes unnoticed, the kind that isn't captured in headlines or interviews. Today, Serena wanted to understand the reality behind the smiles, the rules, and the unspoken judgments. She walked past the treadmills, her thoughts a steady, analytical hum. This is what ordinary feels like, she reflected. No fame to soften the edges, no reputation to shield me from judgment. Her mission was simple yet profound, to experience the invisible barriers that ordinary people of color face daily in spaces meant to be welcoming. Every glance, every pause, every hesitation would be data. She wanted to feel the world's indifference firsthand, to measure respect that isn't granted automatically, and to uncover the subtle inequities hidden in plain sight. This silent experiment was as much about observation as it was about endurance. Memories flashed unbidden, competitions where her performance was dissected more harshly than her peers, awards delayed or diminished, accolades given reluctantly, if at all. Even when I excelled, it never felt enough, she thought, recalling coaches who expected twice the effort, referees whose calls skewed subtly against her, and teammates who whispered doubts. Every success had been shadowed by skepticism, every triumph undercut by bias. Serena's body remembered the sting of unequal treatment, the extra layers of proof she had to supply just to earn acknowledgement. Her disguise today was more than a test. It was a confrontation with decades of systemic injustice, a way to Measure whether subtle discrimination still lingered in spaces meant to nurture growth. Each cautious step in the gym carried the weight of history, the unseen tension between talent and the perceptions of those unwilling to fully accept it. Do you have your membership ID? The receptionist asked hesitantly, her tone polite but clipped, eyes narrowing as she scanned Serena's face. Yes, it's right here, Serena replied, extending her card smoothly, aware of the subtle pause. That lingered too long. The hesitation, the micro-expression of doubt, spoke volumes. She had encountered it before. Staff who questioned competence, visitors who were second-guessed, smiles that didn't reach the eyes. Each minor delay, each whispered judgment became a marker of the invisible walls she was navigating. Today, she was documenting every nuance, cataloging every subtle barrier that revealed how ordinary people of color are evaluated before they are truly known. As Serena walked deeper into the gym, eyes followed, brief but unmistakable, tracking her presence. Whispers floated like currents she could feel but not fully hear. Members exchanged glances, their judgment palpable, subtle, yet persistent. She noticed the distinction immediately. The same effort she might have made in the past, ignored or celebrated depending on notoriety, was now scrutinized with quiet suspicion. The weight of unspoken bias pressed in, confirming her assumption. This was not a space designed for someone like her to feel fully accepted. With each step, the invisible barriers multiplied, layering tension into every interaction, yet also strengthening her resolve to witness and understand the truth. "Hold on, that's not how it's done," the trainer barked, striding toward her with a swagger that filled the gym. His chest puffed as though announcing his authority, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. "I set the standard around here," he boasted, eyes scanning the room with a self-satisfied air, daring anyone to challenge him. Serena didn't flinch, her gaze calm but unwavering. She recognized the type, someone who thrived on dominance and subtly policing the boundaries of acceptance. Yet his presence alone made the atmosphere heavier, the implicit message clear. He decided who belonged and who didn't. As he circled closer, Serena's pulse steadied, her mind cataloging every movement, every inflection, every shred of arrogance. Today, she wasn't here for confrontation. She was here to observe, to understand how bias manifests in ordinary spaces, and to test the invisible lines that dictated privilege and exclusion. "Let me show you the proper technique," he said, interrupting her warm-up mid-stretch, voice dripping with condescension. "You don't want to hurt yourself, do you?" Serena raised an eyebrow but stayed silent, letting the words wash over her. She could feel the subtle mockery in his tone, the assumption that she was inexperienced, unworthy of independent instruction. His helpfulness was a mask for judgment, a tool to reinforce his self-appointed hierarchy. "You've got to lift like this," he continued, demonstrating with exaggerated precision as though she were incapable of understanding the basics. "It's all about form. People often forget that." Serena's jaw tightened slightly, but her voice remained calm. "I appreciate the concern, but I've got this," she said evenly, refusing to cede ground. Every patron nearby watched, some curious, some amused, and Serena felt the weight of scrutiny deepen, but she did not waver. "Here, you can use this one," he said, tossing her a worn-out dumbbell with a dented handle. The metal scraped against the floor, its coating chipped, a far cry from the polished, brand-new machines reserved for the white members lined up nearby. Serena caught the glance he exchanged with another trainer, a silent signal that reinforced segregation. The message was unmistakable. Certain people earned access to the best, while others were expected to make do. She picked up the dumbbell carefully, noting every flaw, every imperfection, cataloging the inequality for herself. Meanwhile, the trainer lingered, hovering as though to ensure she struggled, adding subtle critiques under the guise of coaching. "Try not to drop it," he said, smirking. These aren't as forgiving as the regular ones." Her grip was steady. Her calm didn't indicate weakness, but observation. Every broken cable, every wobbling machine, every whispered comment fueled the evidence she was silently recording. Serena was noting the structural bias embedded in the gym, how microaggressions, inequitable resources, and preferential treatment quietly reinforced a racial hierarchy. Eyes flicked toward her from across the room. A few members leaned closer, eyebrows raised, whispers curling through the air. Some recorded on their phones, others shifted uncomfortably, while the majority looked away, unwilling to intervene. The silence wasn't neutral, it was consent. The same bystanders who might have spoken out if a different person were humiliated instead chose avoidance, allowing the injustice to persist. Serena noticed every glance, every fleeting expression, as the crowd silently validated the trainer's authority. A man at the bench muttered under his breath, "Weird how some people get treated differently," but said nothing more. Serena's eyes met his for a fraction of a second, an acknowledgement that the truth was visible, yet ignored. The complicity, the quiet acceptance of bias, weighed as heavily as the trainer's arrogance, and she stored it all meticulously in her mind. Despite the condescension and unequal treatment, Serena's composure remained intact. Every gesture, every tone, every whispered judgment registered with precision. Her calm exterior was deliberate. Patience was her shield, awareness her weapon. The trainer continued his posturing, unaware that she was observing with unflinching clarity. Her eyes, sharp and deliberate, tracked every detail: the subtle favoritism, the distribution of premium equipment, the body language of patrons complicit in the quiet injustice. "I see everything," her gaze seemed to say, a silent promise of accountability. This wasn't ignorance. It was strategy, cataloging bias, preparing for the confrontation that would eventually follow. Serena absorbed each slight, each unequal assignment, transforming humiliation into insight. Her mind sharpened, her resolve deepened, and though her lips remained sealed, the fire behind her eyes hinted at the reckoning to come. "Seriously? That's your best?" the trainer bellowed, his voice slicing across the room. The group session froze mid-rep, eyes snapping toward Serena. Laughter bubbled at the edges, hesitant at first, then swelling as he continued, every word designed to wound. Serena's hands tightened around the dumbbells, her composure outwardly unshaken. Inside, a surge of heat ignited, but she forced herself to breathe evenly, cataloging the moment as meticulously as every previous slight. The trainer circled, his smirk magnifying the spectacle, a predator thriving on public degradation. "You call that strength? Come on, everyone, watch this disaster," he taunted, emphasizing each syllable so every member felt implicated in the joke. Serena's presence was no longer quiet observation. It had become entertainment at her expense. Yet even as the humiliation mounted, her eyes remained sharp, unblinking. Every motion, every flicker of judgment from the crowd, every smirk was noted. She was not here to react impulsively. This public shaming would not erase her. It would reveal the systemic cruelty hidden behind casual arrogance and microaggressions. The trainer exaggerated her posture, her careful alignment twisted into caricature. "Look at those arms!" he crowed, flexing mockingly in the air. The gym erupted, half in nervous chuckles, half in outright laughter, and Serena's skin prickled under the collective gaze. Her muscles moved fluidly, precise and controlled, but the audience only saw the distortion he orchestrated. He leaned closer, whispering just loud enough, "Maybe this isn't for everyone, huh?" A wave of discomfort rippled among the onlookers. Some shifted awkwardly, unsure whether to intervene or join in. Serena's lips remained pressed together, jaw firm, each laugh, each derisive comment only strengthened her resolve. The cruelty was intentional, a performance designed to humiliate a person of color for entertainment while reinforcing his superiority. And yet, even in the mockery, there was a strange revelation. Her own power, unacknowledged by the room, radiated quietly through her controlled movements. The laughter continued, but she recorded it all in her mind. A ledger of bias and unspoken exclusion, each second etching the injustice deeper into her memory. "She's not even good enough," someone murmured behind her, barely audible over. The echoing laughter, yet sharp enough to pierce. Serena's ears caught it, and her eyes flicked to the source, a young man pretending to concentrate on his set, but the words betrayed his complicity. It wasn't just the trainer's aggression. It was the crowd, the murmurs, the silent validation of hierarchy. Every whisper reinforced the narrative that she was an outsider, someone whose skill was irrelevant in the face of prejudice. Serena inhaled, steadying herself, her mind cataloging. The judgment, the tiny betrayals, the normalized inequity. Each dismissive glance, each quiet remark, each chuckle served as evidence of the subtle systems reinforcing exclusion and undermining merit, a microcosm of bias in plain view. With deliberate precision, Serena approached the barbell, loading, weight that would challenge most in the room, every muscle coiled and released in flawless rhythm, her strength undeniable. The crowd shifted again, murmuring in surprise, but the trainer waved it off with a scoff. "Lucky form," he said, his voice oozing dismissal. "Don't get cocky. Anyone can lift by accident once or twice." He leaned casually against a machine, clearly signaling that her achievement was inconsequential, unworthy of acknowledgement. Yet the display spoke for itself. The weights moved smoothly, each rep controlled, effortless, her power undeniable even to the casual observer. Serena's breathing remained steady, her stance unwavering, a quiet contradiction to the trainer's assertions. "You see that?" A whispered voice beside her muttered, admiration faint but tinged with caution. Serena didn't respond, letting the moment stretch as the instructor continued minimizing her efforts. Every lift was a statement. She existed, she excelled, and no condescension could erase the truth of her capability. Still, the trainer's dismissal persisted, a reminder that recognition was filtered through bias, and that even extraordinary ability could be rendered invisible when the audience chose alignment with prejudice. Serena's mind cataloged every slight, every smirk, every overlooked lift, evidence for the reckoning she silently vowed would come. Glowing screens appeared in hands around her. Some members recorded the session, documenting the humiliation. Others scrolled indifferently, absorbed in notifications, unconcerned by the injustice unfolding. Serena's eyes flicked from phone to phone. Technology amplified the paradox. Witnesses existed, yet accountability evaporated. Each camera lens captured the bias. Each swipe of disinterest validated the trainer's authority, silently telling her story that society often observed discrimination. Without action, the contrast stung, some eager to share, others too passive to intervene. Social media became both an ally and adversary, chronicling the unequal treatment while allowing onlookers to remain comfortably removed. Serena absorbed the nuances, noting every recording, every dismissive glance, every silent participant. The digital age had transformed bystanders into passive enablers, and she cataloged the scene with the clarity of a historian, aware that this footage could serve as testimony of persistent inequity in modern spaces. "People like you don't last here," he spat, his words slicing through the murmurs and laughter. The room fell silent for a heartbeat, the weight of exclusion heavier than any barbell in the gym. Serena felt the sting, sharp and deliberate, an attempt to reduce her entire identity to a stereotype, to erase her presence through intimidation. Few gasped, others shifted uneasily, yet no one challenged the assertion. The trainer's authority filled the air, his cruelty normalized in their collective silence. Every insult, every act of belittlement had led to this crescendo, a single devastating line designed to humiliate, exclude, and assert dominance. Serena's jaw tightened. The sting of words, as venomous as any public mockery, only fueled the fire behind her restraint. The comment echoed in her mind, a stark reminder of the systemic barriers that persisted beyond appearances, in spaces where talent alone could never guarantee respect. Her hands gripped the weights more tightly, every fiber of her being bracing against the dismissal. Yet outwardly she remained still, poised, every glance recording the cruelty and cataloging, the injustice for later reckoning. Though the gym's tension pressed in from every angle, Serena held her silence with deliberate intent. The laughter, the whispers, the digital documentation, all of it collided in her awareness, yet she betrayed nothing. Her gaze, steady and unflinching, concealed the storm raging inside. Anger, frustration, resolve, every emotion restrained, focused into a controlled force that no taunt could dissipate. She wasn't reacting. She was preparing, absorbing each slight, each act of bias, each unspoken dismissal. The trainer's words lingered, but she did not falter. Silence became armor, patience a weapon, awareness a quiet declaration of strength. Her eyes, steel-like, captured everything. The injustice, the complicity, the microaggressions that defined the space. In that controlled stillness, Serena transformed humiliation into strategy, oppression into observation, and public degradation into a ledger of truths that would later demand acknowledgement. The storm was not gone. It waited, biding its time, sharp and ready. "Wait! That's Serena!" a voice muttered near the back, hesitant yet sharp enough to cut through the tension. The words landed like a spark in dry kindling, rippling silently through the room. Heads turned subtly at first, curiosity replacing casual amusement. Whispers spread, questions, half-formed astonishment, disbelief. Serena felt the shift, though outwardly nothing changed. Her lips stayed still, her breathing steady, but inside, a quiet satisfaction grew. Recognition had begun, and the mockery she endured was now teetering on the edge of reckoning. Those murmurs, previously meaningless chatter, now carried weight. Each person who heard the name started connecting dots, the trainer's cruel antics, suddenly cast in a new light. Serena's presence, once reduced to spectacle, was now becoming undeniable. The balance had begun to tilt. A few attendees exchanged glances, their confusion slowly morphing into realization. The power of acknowledgement had begun, subtle yet irreversible, as her reputation quietly surged before anyone could react. Gasps spread like wildfire. Phones lifted, capturing the moment that had once been derided as entertainment. Murmurs grew louder. "No way! That's her?" The gym's energy shifted, mockery replaced by stunned silence. Recognition spread through the crowd, each onlooker, now aware that they had witnessed a misjudgment of epic proportions. Serena remained composed, letting the moment breathe, letting the weight of her accomplishments register in real time. The whispers of awe grew into murmurs of respect, her identity now undeniable. Even the members who had laughed before now held their attention, cameras recording, hearts racing with surprise. Social media would soon amplify the scene. Yet here, and now, she commanded the room without uttering a single word. The trainer's smirk faltered under the growing scrutiny. His authority, previously unquestioned, began to crack as the crowd realized they had underestimated the very person they sought to ridicule. The trainer's confident posture wavered. Sweat formed at his temples as panic flickered in his eyes, betraying the mask of dominance he had worn all session. How is this possible?" he muttered under his breath, his voice shaking, a stark contrast to the bravado that had filled the room moments ago. He stumbled over instructions, his jokes flat, hollow. The laughter he once commanded now returned to him in uncomfortable silence. Every glance toward Serena reminded him of the gravity of his error. He had humiliated a globally recognized athlete, a barrier-breaking competitor whose presence eclipsed his own. I think there's been a misunderstanding, he stammered, trying to regain control. His words fell flat, ignored, as realization tightened its grip over the room. The crowd's energy shifted from ridicule to quiet reverence, their attention drawn entirely to Serena, leaving the trainer isolated in his unraveling authority. Slowly, deliberately, Serena reached for her cap. Fingers gripping the brim, she paused, allowing anticipation to swell. The room leaned forward collectively, the silence tangible, electric. Then, with measured grace, she removed it, letting her hair fall freely, her gaze locking onto the trainer. Every muscle in her body radiated authority. She did not speak immediately. She didn't need to. The shift in posture alone demanded attention. Her eyes, unwavering and intense, conveyed power, experience, and unyielding presence. The trainer's previous control crumbled under the force of her quiet command. "You've been enjoying the wrong impression all this time," she finally spoke, voice steady, resonant, cutting through the residual tension. The words didn't just convey indignation. They asserted her identity, her dominance, her legacy. The audience, now fully awake to the reality before them, moved from passive bystanders to active witnesses of respect. Phones still hovered in the air, recording every detail, but the energy no longer belonged to ridicule. It belonged to Serena. Even the trainer could not avert his eyes. His posture stiffened, defensiveness rising instinctively. Yet the room, previously his stage, now belonged entirely to her. "You laughed at me for being new." Serena's voice sliced through the silence, sharp yet controlled. "But I've been breaking barriers long before you set foot in a gym." Each word landed with precision, each phrase a blow to the arrogance that had fueled the session. The crowd felt it. A chill ran through them, the magnitude of the insult's reversal sinking in. Every onlooker who had once entertained the trainer's mockery now absorbed the truth. Serena's legacy was monumental, her presence commanding, and her authority indisputable. The trainer's mouth opened, no words forming, a reactionless gasp betraying his disbelief. The room, once hostile, now hummed with tension, awe, and newfound respect. Her declaration wasn't just about individual vindication. It was an unflinching exposure of bias, a reminder that public humiliation could be shattered by recognition. Confidence and unapologetic authenticity. Sweat beaded on the trainer's forehead as his composure eroded. Each glance at Serena revealed the collapse of his hubris, the facade of authority shattered. The gym's energy inverted completely. Admiration replaced mockery. Respect surged where derision had lingered. Phones lowered slowly, the crowd's attention fully realigned. Conversations whispered in awe, heads nodded, and smiles of acknowledgement spread. Serena's dominance wasn't loud. It was undeniable, earned through legacy, poise, and integrity. Even the trainer's attempts at reclamation faltered, powerless against the collective recognition that had crystallized in the room. The power had shifted. "Have you seen this?" A subscriber shouted across social media, linking the clip that had gone viral overnight. The video of the trainer's humiliating mockery, followed by Serena's commanding reveal, had spread like wildfire, triggering outrage and conversations. Far beyond the gym's walls, notifications pinged relentlessly. Comments poured in, condemning discrimination and praising Serena's courage. The once-contained incident became an undeniable statement against bias, exposing not just the trainer's arrogance but systemic cruelty hiding in plain sight. By morning, the management faced a flood of complaints, pressure mounting to act. Silence was no longer an option. The story demanded accountability, and the world was watching. The trainer was suspended immediately, his authority stripped, his reputation fractured beyond repair. Private calls and public outrage left him cornered, forced to confront the consequences of his actions. The message was unmistakable. Systemic cruelty cannot survive exposure. Public accountability had dismantled the facade, proving that even those who wield power in small spaces are subject to scrutiny and moral responsibility. Whispers of justice reverberated through the community, the trainer's fall a warning that bias and humiliation carry real-world repercussions. Serena stepped forward, gaze steady, voice warm yet firm. "This isn't about revenge," she said, scanning the crowd. "It's about creating a space where everyone belongs, where no one is silenced for being different." Those who had felt marginalized hesitated, then approached. Women, athletes, and newcomers from all walks of life felt courage swell as Serena invited them into a supportive circle. Together, they shared stories of exclusion, realizing strength multiplied when channeled collectively. Her platform had transformed from a single act of defiance into a beacon for empowerment. Social media amplified the movement. Hashtags like "breaking barriers" and "no more bias" spread, inspiring others to challenge discrimination in gyms, workplaces, and communities. Serena's response became a template for leadership rooted in integrity rather than retaliation. The incident reinforced an enduring truth. Racism thrives in silence, but falters under scrutiny. Courage and exposure dismantle prejudice, leaving lessons that resonate far beyond a single gym. Serena's defiance proved that voices, once silenced, could illuminate injustice and spark meaningful change, demanding reflection from all who witnessed it. Applause greeted her as she exited the gym, not for fame alone, but for resilience, strength, and unwavering grace. Heads turned in admiration, whispers of inspiration spreading. Serena's journey embodied triumph through dignity, proving that true victory lies in lifting others while standing firmly against injustice. Think about the spaces you've walked into, places that should feel safe, the narrator asks, voice steady and challenging. Have you ever felt judged, sidelined, or silenced because of who you are? Recognize it and let that feeling ignite awareness. Your story matters, the narrator continues. Share experiences of discrimination in the comments below. Together we can create a space where voices are heard, supported, and amplified, beyond the silence. Don't let these stories fade, the narrator urges. Like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Help expose injustice, inspire change, and ensure the conversation reaches every corner where bias tries to hide.